Hello，你好，Welcome back，欢迎回来to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger on July 21st, 2021. Got a nice bit of symmetry there, 212021. And today is also Guam's Liberation Day, as I mentioned on yesterday's Tactical Tuesday. So, happy Liberation Day to anyone who's from the island of Guam, all the Chamorro friends, families. Hopefully, I know they're having a good celebration. Um, if you ever know people from the island of Guam, if you ever know Chamorro people, they are very festive and very much into celebration and having a good time. Great musicians, great cooks, a lot of good food from there. Uh, I have also been told, although I have never been to Guam myself, I have been told by multiple sources that it is the most beautiful place in the world and definitely worthwhile visiting. So it is definitely a place on my to-go list. I heard it's only like 3 hours away from Taiwan by airplane. So one of these days, if I go back to Taiwan, maybe I will swing by Guam and take a look see there. Hey, speaking of going back to Taiwan, as I get older and older, I start to think about home more and more often, and think about my childhood more and more often, like most old cultures out there. I guess it seems like when you get older, you just reminisce more and more about the good old days. So I started to think about something that I really miss a lot here in Canada. Uh, Little, very commonplace snack food, dessert, uh, comfort food that is very popular with Chinese people and Taiwanese people. This food that is very exclusive to my people is called sugar fried chestnut, 糖炒栗子, 糖炒栗子, sugar fried chestnut. When I was little, quite often when I get out of school, and there would be vendors lining the streets, and many of these vendors would have a giant steel kettle or steel wok or frying pan, and have they would dump a handful of chestnut in there and fry it up with a giant spatula. And while they're frying, they have to keep adding sugar and uh, sugar and water mixture in there. And while they're frying, you just smell this really sweet aroma of sugar, fried sugar, and then underlying flavor of chestnut. And then when you buy them, you get a whole paper bag of them, and it was really really cheap. I remember that you can get 2 or 3 pounds of these sugar fried chestnut for less than $5 Canadian, less than $100 Taiwanese. And uh, after you buy them, then of course you got to shell them, get them out of the shell, peel them, and then have yourself a great time. It's just one of those food that you can eat slowly and while you're watching cartoon or doing homework, and of course the action of having to peel them uh, keep your hand occupied as well, give your hands something to do while you are watching movie or uh, uh, paying attention to a very boring textbook or audiobook. Now nowadays, you can get sugar fried chestnut pretty much anywhere you want, any time of the year, in Taiwan, in China, in Hong Kong. I mean, if I want to be honest, I if I really want to, I can get them here in Vancouver as well. There are vendors especially at the night market that sells them. But first, the flavor is not traditional. It's not they don't do it right. And second, the price is way too high. Like if you want to get a pound of sugar fried chestnut here, you would be looking at maybe $15-20, something really ridiculous like that. So me remembering how cheap these things were, uh, or still are, on Taiwan, I just can't make myself splurge on these things. But in the old days, when I say the old days, I'm talking about only like 30, 40 years ago. In the old days, sugar fried chestnut was a very seasonal kind of food. Is it because chestnut only grow well in cold climate? When the weather gets cold, the chestnuts start to get sweeter and sweeter. So chestnut was often linked with a Chinese holiday called Han Lu. Uh, Han is usually around our Thanksgiving time here in Canada. So about October 10, October 9, around that time. Uh, 寒露节, there's no equivalent in English, but you can think of it as autumn solstice. It's a holiday Chinese people do to greet the coming of winter, to uh, prepare themselves that weather is going to get cold, and if you have any unfinished business for this year, you better get on doing them. So 寒露节 was a day that people will serve a very, very good meal to their family, to their friends, uh, saying that, okay, cold weather is ahead, winter is coming, so let's drink up, eat up, and store enough fat for the winter. 韩露节 was sort of that, for that purpose. And also, 韩露节 was a sign for people to say, okay, no, it's time to put away the summer clothes, and it's time to take out the warmer winter jacket and winter coat and warmer blanket. Uh, it gives people a landmark to when it is time to change out their outfit, change out the beddings and the blanket and things they use at home. And it was 寒露节 precisely that marked the beginning of people selling uh, sugar-fried chestnuts on the street. Back in the old days, if you wanted to find sugar-fried chestnut prior to 寒露节, prior to October, you weren't going to find it. Like it was just not done. Uh, the earliest you're going to find anyone selling sugar-fried chestnut would be around October 10. And after that, for the rest of October, November, December, January, all the way up into March, they're everywhere. That uh, favorite snack food for children and adults. The interesting thing about these sugar-fried chestnut is there's quite a few uh, traditions, rules, regulations, and customs surrounding them. First, for first and foremost, they have to exclusively come from northern China, uh, especially for Chinese people. They have to come from northern China. Even if they weren't, the vendors is going to tell you that he gets his chestnuts from northern China. Why is that? Because the chestnut in northern China, they're smaller and they have higher sugar content because northern China is a lot colder than southern China. So their chestnut's a lot better. If you get chestnut from the south, they look really big. They look good. They're really big and round, and they have a lot of moisture in them. But that also means they tend to go moldy inside their shell, and also uh, their sugar content is very low. So when you're eating them, they kind of don't taste like anything. Uh, so the chestnut from southern China are typically used for dishes, chestnut cakes, chestnut cookies, and chestnut fried fish, and stuff like that. So they use them in dishes where you can get a little bit of nutty flavor and chestnut texture, but it's not overpowering. But for sugar fried chestnut, where the main point is the chestnut itself, then you need proper chestnuts from northern China, where they're small and very, very sweet. Also, I didn't know this. I ate all these chestnuts when I was a child, and I didn't know about this. Did you guys know that chestnuts grow in a bunch, uh, in a bulb, like garlic? I mean, I really didn't know that. When I was a kid, I saw these things every day, almost, and I always thought that no, you have chestnut tree, and then these chestnuts just each growing individually on the branch, like cherries or blueberries. But apparently, chestnuts grow like garlic in a bulb, and you have to peel them apart. The outer part of the bulb is kind of spiky, and so once you peel them apart, you get these each individual chestnut in their shell, and then you have to get them out of the shell when you are ready to eat them. That's something that I only found out today, actually, when I was doing some quick research on chestnut, just to make sure I know what I'm talking about. In the very beginning, sugar fried chestnut was a very exclusive snack food in northern China. And it wasn't until almost 100 years ago that it got uh, to southern China, and you started to see them everywhere in China and Taiwan and Hong Kong. The story goes that there was a scholar from southern China who went to the capital, the imperial city, Beijing, to do the imperial exam. We talked about the imperial exam in the past. Basically, every 10 years, every 15 years or so, Chinese people that wanted to work for the government have to travel to the imperial city and write in the enter themselves in the imperial exam. And those who do really well get chosen to work as ministers and mayors and governors. And people who didn't do well get sent home. You have to wait another 10 years before you can try again. So it was a big deal in the old days. So, long story short, this scholar from southern China went to Beijing to write the imperial exam and failed. So he decided, well, if I have to wait for another 10 years to try this again, who knows if I'm going to succeed in 10 years? That I need to do something else. So this is not a good plan to survive. I need to find a way to make money. So he decided that on his way home, he wasn't going to go back to southern China empty-handed. So on his way home, he spent uh, a few months learning how to fry chestnut from the traditional, authentic chestnut fryers in Beijing. And he spent the rest of his money on buying 3 or 4 wagons full of chestnut and brought them back to southern China with him and set up shop. So he became the first person to sell sugar-fried chestnut in southern China. And people liked it so much that people started copying him, importing chestnuts from northern China, and next thing you knew, chestnuts were being fried everywhere throughout China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. The sugar-fried chestnuts are so popular that in 1914, a Japanese merchant who came to China to trade saw them as a good opportunity and brought a bunch of chestnuts back to Japan with him. So now, if you go to Japan in the autumn, in October, November, you will see sugar-fried chestnut everywhere on the street in Japan, and all these chestnuts are they'll have signs that said imported directly from yada yada city in Beijing, China. Even though these Japanese people probably have no idea where Beijing, China really is, but they like to they because the original chestnuts were imported from Beijing, China. So everyone after that started saying that their chestnuts were from Beijing, China as well. Kind of ironic that you see something that's so traditionally Chinese in Japan, but we've talked about this before that a majority of Japanese culture, uh, including noodle, rice, and their written language, and even their last name, came from Chinese heritage. So, but that's another story for another day. I just thought it's interesting to mention that they really enjoy our sugar fried chestnut as well. Now, for the most part, when you get sugar fried chestnut, and I remember this on a personal level, when you get sugar fried chestnut in Taiwan, in southern China, in Hong Kong, in Japan, uh, yeah, they're really sticky. They're really messy because, like I said, when they're being fried, a lot of syrup, a lot of sugar being added into the pot, uh, and so when by the time you take them out of the bag, they're all sticky, and it just kind of a messy thing to eat. Uh, that is very, very non-traditional, actually. The real traditional, properly done sugar fried chestnut cannot be messy, cannot be messy. And here is why. Like I said, sugar fried chestnut didn't really become popular all over China and Hong Kong and Taiwan until almost 100 years ago. Prior to that, it was exclusively a snack food for northern China, primarily Beijing, China, the imperial city. So the first patrons of sugar fried chestnut were royalties, the imperial court, the emperor and the queens and the concubines and the generals and the ministers, the noblemen, noblewomen in Beijing, China. They were the primary patrons of sugar fried chestnut back in the Qing dynasty. It was said that just one store alone in Qing dynasty was selling an average of 20,000 pounds of sugar fried chestnut every October. And most of these were sold straight to the emperor, straight into the imperial palace. So, of course, if you think about what the emperor was like, the emperor was immaculate all the time, have to be super clean, presentable, because everyone's looking at him 24 hours a day. Even when he's sleeping, someone's looking at him. Yeah, I'm not making that up. Even when the emperor was sleeping, there were people standing guard right there in the bedchamber. When you see on the movie where the guards standing outside the bedchamber and no one's in there, that's wrong. Uh, the emperor was so important in the back then that there's always guards right there inside the bedchamber. So if the emperor was feeling frisky and wanted to get it on with his queen or concubines, well, he had to just pretend those guards weren't there, and those guards have to just pretend they weren't paying attention. Um, so yeah, the emperor was always being watched. So the emperor always have to be presentable. So it's not okay. It's not okay for the emperor to stick his hand into a paper bag and come up with a hand of sugar fried chestnut. And now his hands all sticky, and he had to wipe it on his robe. And now he got this handprint on his imperial robe. He had to go get changed and showered, just to enjoy some sugar fried chestnut. So in the old days, in Qin Dynasty, the proper the one way to figure out if a person who's selling sugar fried chestnut really knew what they were doing was these sugar fried chestnut have to be clean. They couldn't be sticky or messy. Another bar, shall we say, another standard, golden standard, to see if a person really knows his trade selling sugar fried chestnut is if the chestnut have breaks in their shell or not. Uh, Properly fried sugar chestnut have to be whole. The shells cannot be broken. Now, nowadays, there are a lot of people selling open-shelled fried chestnut. So that's a new thing. Back then, that wouldn't be acceptable. And some people may say, well, that's really picky. Why do you care if the shell is broken or not? Well, actually, it's that way for a reason. You see, in the old days and even now, a lot of time when you see people doing sugar fried chestnut, they're doing it outdoors in the open with a big pot with no lid on it, which means while you're frying the chestnut, anything from flies and ants and mosquitoes to dust and grits in the air, a car drive by, suddenly there's dust in your pot, a horse run by, suddenly there's sand and dirt in your pot. And no, so since it's done in the open, you have to be very careful. It's not going to give you food poisoning. If your chestnut it has open shell, then all that grit and whatever might be in the air is going to get into the part that you're going to eat. So if you keep the shell whole, then at least it's keeping the dirt and dust and grit off of the part you eat. So it was vitally important in the old days that when you fry chestnut, you have to keep the shell whole. You can't have a broken one. So those were the two golden standards. How chestnut fryer was measured for their skills and their authenticity. One, they couldn't be messy. Two, they couldn't be broken. Another little interesting trivia before we go. I used to think that when they add the sugar into sugar fried chestnut, it is for sweetening up the chestnut. That's what I thought for the longest time. But then when you really think about it, that doesn't make sense. Because if you got to keep the shell whole, the sugar is not going to get to the chestnut, which means by the time you peel away the shell, all the sugar is gone. So the sugar is not in there to make the chestnut sweeter. The chestnuts themselves are supposed to be sweet enough. So it got nothing to do with the sugar. The sugar for the sugar fried chestnut, the, the sugars are added to suck out the moisture from inside the chestnut, kind of like how you preserve food with salt. Because when you suck out the moisture from the chestnut, it will make the chestnut more mushy inside the shell, and all the sugar inside the chestnut itself will be more noticeable when you eat the chestnut. The sugar, when you add them in while you're frying the chestnut, also give that very delicious smell of caramelized sugar, uh, with that which will draw people in. Plus, the sugar-coated chestnut shell also have a very shiny, very beautiful looking finish to them. They're kind of black, they're like shiny, shiny black by the time they're done. Um, so the sugar is not for sweetening out the chestnut. The sugar is for soaking out the moisture, producing the smell, and to make the chestnut look better on the outside. Next time, if you are around Chinatown or some Chinese establishment and you see people selling fried chestnut, I highly recommend you give them a try. Some people think they're a little bit of a pain in the behind to eat because you have to peel them, but believe me, they are worth it. They are really, really good. And if you don't come across them, then you know next time in the winter around Christmas time, buy yourself a pound or two of chestnut and roast them up and eat them, and you will get a very similar taste to what I'm talking about. It's this snack food that I grew up with and I still miss so much. Thank you very much for checking out today's Wisdom Wednesday. If you like these little tidbits and uh, trivias and useless knowledge about the Orient, then please do check out the Johnny Tiger Experience podcast, which you can find on any Amazon Echo devices and podcast platform. I will see you guys again tomorrow on Toy Thursday. For now, 谢谢 and 再见。